Okay. Are you able to hear? Hello?
Yes,
Right. Today I want to tell a very, very important topic. That is acute pancreatitis is very, very important for your theory. And most of the times it will be asked as an essay question for you. So this is a very, very important topic. That is acute pancreatitis. So what is the definition of acute pancreatitis? So it is defined as acute non-bacterial inflammatory condition or aseptic inflammatory condition caused by activation, interstitial liberation and autodigestion of the pancreas presenting as acute pain abdomen with greater increase in the serum levels of pancreatic enzymes. So it is a non-bacterial inflammatory condition because of the activation and liberation of the pancreatic enzymes, which will be causing autodigestion of the pancreas, leading to aseptic inflammation, causing severe pain abdomen with increase in the levels of serum levels of pancreatic enzymes. That is mainly amylase and lipase. And coming to the etiology, number one is age of the patient. It may occur at any age. That peak incidence usually in the young people, that is below 30 and 40 years of age. And two major causes of acute pancreatitis. That is number one is biliary disease. That is mainly biliary calculi. That is which are responsible for about 50 to 70% of the cases of acute pancreatitis. And the second one is alcohol abuse, which are responsible for about 20 to 30% of the cases. And coming to the various etiological factors, so you can remember A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H like that. So A for alcohol, that is alcohol abuse, major cause in our country, and it stimulates pancreatic secretions which are rich in proteins and forms protein plugs resulting in obstruction to the pancreatic duct. So what is the mechanism how it produces pancreatitis? Because of alcohol, so alcohol taken which stimulates pancreas. Okay. So another mechanism how it produces acute pancreatitis is alcohol stimulates trypsinogen, which causes spasm of sphincter of Oddi. So this is second mechanism, and third mechanism is alcohol is having direct toxic effect on the pancreas, and associated risk factors that is in addition to alcohol, there may be fatty diet, smoking, hyperlipidemias, and malnutrition. So all these factors they precipitate an attack of acute pancreatitis when it is particularly associated with alcohol abuse. And second one is biliary disease. That is gallstones in the biliary tract. They cause obstruction to the common bile duct, particularly at the ampulla of Vater, which leads to reflux of bile into the pancreatic duct. Because I already told in the anatomy in detail, because there is a common channel for main pancreatic duct which opens into the CBD and it opens into the ampulla of Vater. So when there is obstruction to the ampulla, there is reflux of pancreatic secretions back into the pancreatic duct, which leads to acute pancreatitis. So this is the biliary tract disease. Stone in the biliary tract is a major cause in Western world. And next comes the collagen vascular diseases. For example, polyarteritis nodosa, and drugs, particularly corticosteroids, and some of the other drugs which may cause acute pancreatitis are tetracyclines, estrogens, azathioprine, valproic acid, some of the diuretics, statins, and gliptins. So these are the drugs when taken for a very long period, they may stimulate an attack of acute pancreatitis. And some of the endoscopic procedures, because when you are manipulating the common bile duct or pancreatic duct, then it may stimulate an attack of acute pancreatitis post-operatively. So post ERCP, this is one of the investigation for treatment as well as diagnosis of the common bile duct stones. So when you are doing ERCP, you must be very careful, because after doing ERCP, it may precipitate an attack of acute pancreatitis. And doing sphincterotomy while extracting stones from the common bile duct, and cannulation of the common bile duct or pancreatic duct, and removal of the stones by basketing from the CBD can precipitate an attack of acute pancreatitis, because it may disrupt the ductal system and it causes extravasation of the enzymes. So during manipulation, there may be damage to the wall of the duct, which may cause a disruption of the ductal epithelium, and it leads to extravasation of the enzymes leading to acute pancreatitis. And sixth one, that is familial or genetic causes, and hereditary pancreatitis due to mutation of cationic tryptanogen gene. So in hereditary pancreatitis, this gene is responsible, which causes acute pancreatitis. And in hereditary pancreatitis, the specialty is it starts most of the times in early childhood and may progress to chronic pancreatitis. So it starts very early during childhood, leading to recurrent attacks of acute pancreatitis, and finally it will lead to chronic pancreatitis, which is a pre-malignant condition. When present for a long time, it leads to pancreatic carcinoma by the age of 70 years. And hyperparathyroidism, that is one of the cause for acute pancreatitis, because it produces all these. One of the complication is pancreatitis, that is it causes hypercalcemia, which may stimulate pancreatic juices and causes pancreatitis, and it also facilitates precipitation of calcium in ducts. So because of high calcium levels, it stimulates more and more secretion of the pancreatic juices, as well as because of hypercalcemia, it may get in the ducts, leading to obstruction of the duct. And the eighth one is hyperlipidemia and hypothermia and hypotension, whatever may be the cause, whether it may be because of post-operative hypotension, which may cause ischemia to the pancreas, leading to acute pancreatitis. And another most important thing is injury to the pancreas, either post-operatively when you are doing surgery for any on the stomach. Sometimes it may cause post-operative acute pancreatitis, or any blunt injury to the abdomen, which may lead to pancreatitis. And infections, particularly viral infections, one of the complications of viral infections like mumps and Coxsackie B virus, which may lead to pancreatitis. And scorpion bite, that is scorpion sting, particularly Trinidor scorpion, which may cause acute pancreatitis. And I already told in the last class congenital anomalies of the pancreatic ducts, that is pancreatic divisum, where the accessory pancreatic duct opens proximal to the main duct. So sometimes what happens, the ampulla, that is minor ampulla, is inadequate for drainage of the pancreatic juice. So because of this pancreatic division, sometimes the opening of the duct may be narrow, which may lead to inadequate drainage of the pancreatic secretions, which may predispose for development of acute pancreatitis. So this is the figure showing this is the pancreatitis, which is caused by autoimmune disease, alcohol, pancreatic divisum, and hyperparathyroidism, that is parathyroid adenoma, and gallstone disease, which may obstruct the CBD, and drug-induced pancreatitis. And this is called gallstone pancreatitis, where the gallstones are present in the gallbladder, which may pass through the CBD, and it may come and obstruct the ampulla of Vater. So stone blocking at the sphincter of Oddi, leading to obstruction to the drainage of the pancreatic secretions, leading to acute pancreatitis. And post-operative pancreatitis, this is one of the important complications. You must always aware of this one, particularly when you are doing some of the surgeries, that is for operations following on CBD, common bile duct, either open, that is for removal of the stone, exploration of CBD, or laparoscopic CBD exploration, and with insertion of T-tube. So there is every time you are manipulating CBD, and you are opening the CBD, removal of the stones in the CBD, either open surgery or laparoscopic surgery, and sometimes you will keep T-tube insertion, because once you close the CBD, you must always keep T-tube, so that for drainage of the bile, and T-tube cholangiogram can be done for any residual stones left behind. So this may stimulate an attack of acute pancreatitis, and sphincteroplasty, ERCP, and extraction of stones from the common bile duct, and pancreatic biopsy, particularly when there is suspicious of chronic pancreatitis or malignancy. Under CT guidance, you can do biopsy, which may cause acute pancreatitis. And gastrectomy, where the pancreas is forming the bed of the stomach, where you are separating some of the adhesions, it may lead to acute pancreatitis. And cardiothoracic surgeries, there is a risk of perioperative administration of calcium, postoperative hypotension, and preoperative renal failure. So these factors may precipitate, particularly when you are doing major cardiothoracic surgeries, the patient may develop acute pancreatitis because of hypotension, or postoperative administration of calcium, and renal failure because of hypotension, which in turn stimulate an attack of acute pancreatitis. And idiopathic, and this is also because sometimes you are not able to find out exact cause. So it is called idiopathic acute pancreatitis. It constitutes about 50% of the cases, even though it is classified as idiopathic, because sometimes the ultrasound examination, which is the first investigation of choice for knowing the gallstones and condition of the gallbladder, sometimes there may be sludge or gallstones which are not detected by ultrasound. These biliary disease may be responsible, but which are not detected, went unnoticed, the patient may get an attack of acute pancreatitis. And this is the mechanism how the acute pancreatitis occurs. So when there is reflux or obstruction to the drainage of the bile, it leads to injury to the acinar cells, and there is premature activation of the pancreatic enzymes within the pancreas. I already told, because the enzymes are stored as zymogen granules, which are inactive, but they get activated within the pancreas. That leads to cellular injury. I already told why the pancreatic enzymes are not causing autodigestion of the pancreas. So when they are activated within the pancreas, so what happens? There will be pancreatic edema. Sometimes it leads to hemorrhage and necrosis of the pancreas. And systemic complications, there will be hemodynamic instability, and it may lead to infection. That is, particularly the bacteria may migrate, leading to bacteremia, and ARDS, acute respiratory distress syndrome, gastrointestinal hemorrhage, renal failure, and disseminated intravascular coagulation. All these systemic complications can occur in a case of severe acute pancreatitis. So this is the mechanism of pancreatitis, that is pathogenesis of tissue damage, that is shown in this flow chart. That is tissue damage, how it produces various local as well as systemic complications of acute pancreatitis. And coming to the pathogenesis, that is autodigestion is the final common pathway leading to acute pancreatitis due to activation of trypsinogen. That is autodigestion caused by activation of trypsinogen. So what are the theories of pathogenesis? These are the theories that have been maybe responsible for causing acute pancreatitis. Number one is obstruction and secretion. So recurrent attacks of pancreatitis, as in case of chronic cases, it may be due to strictures, stasis, resulting in autodigestion due to biliary reflux. So recurrent attacks of pancreatitis is because of obstruction to the duct, which may be due to strictures or stasis of secretions because of strictures or any caliculi, resulting in autodigestion because of the bile reflux. And another most important thing is common channel theory, that is in 90% of the cases, because this is normal anatomical arrangement, that is bile duct and pancreatic duct, they converge into ampulla of Vater. So because of this common channel theory, I already showed in the figure, because any stone, that is gallstone, obstructing the sphincter of Oddi, because it leads to obstruction of both the ducts, so there will be reflux of bile into the pancreatic duct, so which will cause ductal injury leading to damage of the pancreatic acini, which may lead to acute pancreatitis. And duodenal reflux, that is activation of enzymes, takes place in the duodenum through the action of enterokinase, because all these pancreatic enzymes will be secreted in the enterokinase. I already told in detail in the physiology of the pancreatic enzymes. So all these enzymes, pancreatic enzymes, they will be activated in the duodenum. So these will cause some of the enzymes, they may cause reflux into the pancreatic duct, which may lead to acute pancreatitis. And the back diffusion theory, through ductal epithelium when damaged by alcohol or bile acids. So these alcohol and bile acids, they damage the wall of the ducts, that leads to enzymatic degradation of the wall of the duct, which will cause acute pancreatitis. So ductal epithelial damage caused by alcohol or bile acids because of the reflux when there is obstruction to the flow of the pancreatic secretions because of the stone. And sometimes systemic sepsis leading to organ failure, the patient hypotension because of the septicemic shock, the patient will go into hypotension, which may stimulate an attack of acute pancreatitis. And examples are ARDS, renal failure, and endotoxins arising from the bacteria. So during this organ failure, sometimes the patient may suffer with an attack of acute pancreatitis. And this is the activation of trypsinogen into trypsin in the pathogenesis of pancreatitis. So each enzyme, how it produces tissue damage, this flow chart is explaining. For example, lipase, which acts on the fat, it produces fatty acids and glycerol. These fatty acids, they combine with the calcium for leading to formation of calcium soaps, leading to fat necrosis. So this is the mechanism caused by lipase. And another enzyme, that is elastase, which digests the elastic fibers of the blood vessels, so that the wall of the blood vessel will become very weak, and it leads to pseudoaneurysm. And this pseudoaneurysm, because of the weakening of the wall of the blood vessel, it may rupture, producing hemorrhage and death. And lysolecithinase, so it causes membrane damage leading to necrosis and spreading. The inflammation gradually spreads throughout the pancreas, leading to necrotizing pancreatitis, and it leads to latter, because of the bacterial infection, it leads to infective necrosis. And phospholipase A2, which causes activation of prostaglandins and bradykinase, which these prostaglandins and bradykinase, they produce diffuse inflammation of the pancreas, leading to acute hypovolemic shock and renal failure. So this is the flow chart that explains how the various enzymes, they cause damage to the pancreas in a case of acute pancreatitis. And clinical features, symptoms. The first and foremost important symptom is any young patient who comes to the casualty with acute upper abdominal pain is the cardinal symptom of acute pancreatitis. Immediately you must elicit the history that he is an alcoholic or not, or is there any history of a patient already having suffering from any gallstones. So severe upper abdominal pain is the cardinal symptom, and typically it is radiating back to develop quickly within few minutes, and it persists for hours or days. So this is a continuous pain, aching pain that is present in the epigastrium, and it is very severe and occurs within minutes and persists for hours or days. And another specialty of this pain is the pain is partially relieved on stooping and bending forwards, because here the patient, because of the inflammation which is retroperitoneal, so there is irritation of the retroperitoneal nerve endings which produces pain. So whenever the patient bends forwards, there is relaxation of the posterior wall of the peritoneum, so that the patient will get a relief of the pain whenever he sits and bends forwards. And particularly the pain gets increased or aggravated whenever the patient takes a meal or alcohol. And another peculiarity of this pain is it is very severe and refractory to the usual doses of analgesics. So whenever you give analgesics, that is a normal dose depending upon the weight of the patient, even then it is not responding to analgesics. So it is very severe. So upper abdominal severe epigastric pain occurring within minutes, continuously persisting, and it is relieved by sitting and stooping and bending forwards, and it is aggravated by meal or alcohol, and it is refractory to usual doses of analgesics. This is the typical description of pain in acute pancreatitis, and it is always associated with nausea and vomiting, and frequent and effortless vomiting will be there. And another thing is the patient is unable to sleep in recumbent position because of the pain. So he always sits and bends forwards to get relief from the pain. And it is the nausea and vomiting which is frequently associated with upper abdominal pain is mainly because of reflux pylorospasm, which produces severe nausea and vomiting. Even after right tube aspiration, the patient is continuously retching with vomitings, and sometimes there may be a low grade fever associated with nausea and vomiting. And sometimes because I already told, because of the duodenal enzymes get activated and there will be reflux, sometimes these enzymes which are activated in the duodenum, and it may cause damage to the wall of the duodenum. So the patient may have bleeding, that is which may present as hematemesis or melena, which indicates the severity of the acute pancreatitis, and it indicates the patient is having very bad prognosis. And on clinical examination, what are the important signs? Number one is the patient is having usually fever, which is only low grade fever, and there will be tachypnea, tachycardia, and there will be cyanosis, which is due to improper perforation of the perfusion of the lungs because of the pain. Because whenever there is pain in the upper abdomen, the patient is unable to take breath completely, because he will be holding the breath. So the patient will be having tachypnea as well as cyanosis. Because of the upper abdominal pain, the patient is not able to have good inspiration, and there may be a jaundice present, which is usually very mild, and which is because of the edema of the head of the pancreas, and signs of shock may be there. The pulse is rapid, feeble, tachycardia with hypotension and cold extremities all indicate there is hypovolemic shock. The patient is slowly going into hypovolemic shock. And on examination of the abdomen, there will be tenderness in the epigastrium, severe abdominal rigidity and guarding will be there. There is distension of the abdomen. Sometimes you can feel a mass in the epigastrium, that is because of the edematous pancreas with greater momentum, and there will be severe muscle guarding, abdominal distension because of the accumulation of the inflammatory fluid or blood in the peritoneal cavity, with the associated paralytic ileus may be there. So all these things, they lead to distension of the abdomen, and very rarely, sometimes you may be able to palpate a vague mass in the epigastric region with abdominal distension because of the inflammatory fluid, or sometimes it may be a blood-stained fluid or accumulation of blood with the severe rigidity and guarding of the upper abdomen. Sometimes the tenderness may be diffused, present all over the abdomen, and there will be rigidity and guarding involving complete abdomen. And there are two important signs, that is Cullen's sign, that is there is bluish ecchymotic discoloration seen around the umbilicus. So this Cullen's sign was initially described in association with ruptured ectopic pregnancy. So bluish ecchymotic discoloration seen around the umbilicus, that is called Cullen's sign. This is a 2 marks question for you. And another important sign is Gray-Turner sign, which is bluish discoloration seen in the flanks, that is flanks of the abdomen. And both these signs are not pathognomic of acute pancreatitis. Both these signs are what is the reason for this discoloration around the umbilicus as well as in the flanks. The reason is because of the peripancreatic and retroperitoneal hemorrhage, there is seepage of blood along the facial planes into the anterior abdominal wall, and it spreads through the falciform ligament into the umbilicus. So this is the region because of the acute inflammation of the pancreas, and there will be hemorrhagic fluid that will be collecting in the around the pancreas as well as in the retroperitoneal area. This will gradually spreads along the facial planes into the anterior abdominal wall. That's why the patient will have discoloration in the flanks and also around the umbilicus. But both the signs are not pathognomic of acute pancreatitis, and these signs may or may not be present in a case of acute pancreatitis. And another thing is, the most important thing I already told, there are respiratory signs like tachypnea, and sometimes because of pleural effusion, there may be dullness over the chest. And another thing is crepitations, bronchi, because of pleural effusion, pneumonitis, and pulmonary edema. So all this will develop because the pathology is in the upper abdomen. The patient is not able to take breathing properly, so he suffers with breathlessness, which may lead to tachypnea, cyanosis, and later the patient may develop pulmonary effusion. So this leads to respiratory problems. And coming to the investigations, that is hemogram, that is hemoglobin. It may be low due to hemorrhagic pancreatitis. Sometimes when the acute pancreatitis is very severe, because it is classified as mild, moderate, and severe. So in severe pancreatitis, there will be hemorrhagic pancreatitis, which may lead to total decrease, that is a decrease in the hemoglobin, and total count may rise up to 15,000 per cubic millimeter. And always you must estimate blood urea and serum creatinine, because the patient is developing hypotension leading to renal failure, and serum amylase. So this is the most commonly estimated enzyme, that is serum amylase. The normal levels of serum amylase are, because the serum amylase is short notes for you, it is commonly asked for 4 marks question. The normal levels are 40 to 80 Somogyi units. It is measured as Somogyi units, that is 40 to 80. And in any case of acute pancreatitis, normally it increases 3 times above normal, which is indicative of acute pancreatitis. Sometimes the values may go up to 400, which is suggestive of acute pancreatitis. And when the values of serum amylase is more than 1000 Somogyi units, it is diagnostic of acute pancreatitis. So it is increased in first 24 to 48 hours and returns to normal within 3 to 4 days. So all these things are very, very important. The normal levels, when it is increased to 3 times, and when it is more than 1000, and when it starts to increase, and when it comes to normal. All these things you have to measure in a case of acute pancreatitis. And another most important thing is sometimes I already told usually it starts decreasing after 3 or 4 days and comes to normal levels after 4 days. So sometimes the serum amylase levels will be very high and they are persisting for more than 1 to 2 weeks. So it indicates persisting levels of serum amylase is an indication for unresolving inflammation of the pancreas. So the inflammation is continuously persisting, and recurrent attacks of pancreatitis. Though the patient will have recurrent attacks of pancreatitis, so the serum levels will not come to normal, and development of complications. So it also indicates that the acute pancreatitis has developed some of the complications like pseudocyst and pancreatic abscess. And another most important thing is when you compare with the serum amylase levels, because serum lipase levels are more specific, and but it is difficult to measure. So when you compare with the serum lipase levels, these serum lipase levels are more specific than serum amylase levels, and blood and urine sugar estimation has to be done because most of the times the patient with acute pancreatitis may suffer with glycosuria. In almost all patients will have this glycosuria because of acute pancreatitis. And a few words about serum lipase. It is also asked as a 2 marks or 4 marks question for you because it is more sensitive and specific than serum amylase. Because nowadays this is estimation of serum lipase is very, very important because it is more sensitive and specific than serum amylase, because serum amylase may be increased in other conditions also, surgical conditions, but serum lipase is more sensitive and it remains elevated for a longer time after onset of symptoms. When you compare with serum amylase, it is persisting for more than 1 to 2 weeks, and normal levels depending upon the lab, it is 25 to 85 or usually always below 100 units per liter. In acute pancreatitis, there will be 3 times increase, that is it may go more than 200 units per liter. So estimation of serum lipase is more specific and sensitive, and abnormal lipase levels are seen in some of the surgical conditions apart from acute pancreatitis, acute chronic pancreatitis, pancreatic carcinoma, severe gastroenteritis, acute cholecystitis, and celiac disease. Sometimes we can see increase in the serum lipase levels. Also in these conditions, it may increase. So all these things you have to write in the examination. And another important investigation is serum calcium levels, because I already told, because one of the causes of acute pancreatitis is hyperparathyroidism. So serum calcium levels, hypocalcemia is seen due to hypoalbuminemia and necrosis of the pancreas. So the serum calcium levels, the patient will develop hypocalcemia because of high calcium levels. I already told, it stimulates pancreatic secretions, and also sometimes it causes a precipitation of calcium in the ducts that leads to obstruction, and it leads to necrosis of the pancreas. And coming to the total proteins, which are usually low, especially the albumin is low level, that is common in acute pancreatitis, and plain X-ray abdomen, because whenever a case comes with acute plain abdomen, always you must take plain X-ray abdomen erect, including both domes of diaphragm, because it also gives so much information, because simple X-ray, it may give an idea about various things, and it is particularly useful to exclude perforation of any peptic ulcer. So you can see calcification in the upper part of the abdomen, which may suggest chronic pancreatitis with caliculi, and it rules out perforation of peptic ulcer because you can see a crescentric air shadow under the right dome of diaphragm, because you must always exclude perforation of peptic ulcer whenever you are diagnosing a case of acute pancreatitis. And sentinel loop sign, because in case of acute pancreatitis, because of the inflammation in the upper abdomen, there will be ileus in a small segment of jejunum. That is, I will show the X-ray. So dilated jejunal loop present in the region of the pancreas, that is typically described as a sentinel loop sign. And another thing is colon cutoff sign, that refers to mild distension of transverse colon in the region of the pancreas where there is abrupt termination of the gas. So only there is localized ileus with the distension of transverse colon, and there is abrupt termination of the gas with collapse of the distal colon, that is descending colon, which is described as colon cutoff sign. And another one is renal halo sign, that is halo around the kidney because of the collection of pancreatic exudate, because the kidney is a retroperitoneal organ. So the inflammatory fluid which collects in the retroperitoneum, it also collects around the kidney, leading to enhancement of the perirenal fat, which is described in the plain X-ray abdomen as renal halo sign. And sometimes, because 10% of the gallstones are radiopaque, sometimes you may diagnose gallstones also. So this is, even though a simple investigation, it gives more information regarding pancreatitis, as well as the main importance of this plain X-ray abdomen is it excludes perforation of peptic ulcer, which is a common differential diagnosis from acute pancreatitis. And this is the sentinel loop syndrome, where sentinel loop sign, where we can see a small segment of jejunum that is present in the epigastric region. That is, it is diagnosed by valvulae conjunctivis, which are corresponding to each other. So this is the segment of jejunum where we see in acute pancreatitis because of the localized ileus. And another simple investigation, non-invasive investigation, that is abdominal ultrasound, because it helps to diagnose any gallstones present, and also it demonstrates edematous pancreas and also fluid collection in the abdomen. And any stones, sometimes you can see stones not only in the gallbladder, that also in CBD. So it is a simple non-invasive investigation, a very useful investigation. It gives idea, because the biliary tract stones is the commonest cause of acute pancreatitis. So we can diagnose gallstones. And the CECT abdomen, it should not be done immediately after an attack of acute pancreatitis. You can wait for 3 to 5 days, because immediately if you do, it will not give any idea about the pathology of the pancreas. And particularly, you have to do in a patient who fails to respond to routine conservative treatment of acute pancreatitis, then only you have to go for CT, because for demonstration of any necrosis, that is going to severe pancreatitis, and ultrasound related FNAC, and for gram staining, it has to be done to select an antibiotic whether there is any infection of the pancreas because of the necrosis. And if gram stain is positive, you must always try to treat it with antibiotics. So CT scan you should not do immediately, because other investigations you can do and decide treatment. Once it is not responding to conservative treatment, then after 3rd day you can go for CECT. And the CECT abdomen, what are the main indications? When the diagnostic uncertainty is there, then you have to go for CECT. And in patients with severe acute pancreatitis, to distinguish whether it is because of the interstitial or from necrotizing pancreatitis. So for differentiation, whether it is interstitial pancreatitis or necrotizing pancreatitis, in the first 72 hours, CT may underestimate the extent of necrosis. That's why you must do always after 3rd day to know the extent of pancreatic damage. Then it is more useful than doing immediately after an attack of acute pancreatitis. And another thing is, by taking CECT of the abdomen, we can grade or stage the severity of the pancreatitis. That is called Balthazar's criteria. I will show in the table. So this is the Balthazar's CT scoring system of acute pancreatitis. A, B, C, D, E grading is there. A is normal, B is edematous, C is mild extrapancreatic collection, severe extrapancreatic collection, and extensive extrapancreatic collection. These are the 5 grades CT grading of acute pancreatitis. It should be done only after 72 hours. And this is the CECT picture showing the edematous pancreatitis. That is, there is enlargement of the pancreas, which is edematous, and showing some of the areas of necrosis. And here also you can see there is enlargement of the pancreas, and it is edematous. The margins are irregular, and it is showing some of the areas of necrosis. And MRCP, endoscopic ultrasound, usually not done unless you suspect that there is any stone in the CPD. Then you can go for MRCP or endoscopic ultrasound. MRCP only gallstone pancreas. Then only you have to, because you told this ERCP may stimulate an attack of acute pancreatitis. So that's why ERCP is not done routinely, unless you suspect that the acute pancreatitis is because of stones in the CBD. Then only you have to go for ERCP as diagnostic and therapeutic purpose. Severe acute pancreatitis, there are various prognostic of the pancreas. So the aim is why you want to follow these scoring system, because they are predicting the persistence of 24 hours, 48 hours. So assess the severity and assess the prognosis so that we can assess the prognosis of the patient after 2 days, after 1 day, 2 days, and 7 days. So the commonly
మంచి పేరాల సర్టిఫికేట్ నిక్கிறாంగల్ల ఇన్నatu చెట్టుకోండి.
So this is the Ranson's and Glasgow scoring system that is given in Bailey law. So it helps to predict the severity of the acute pancreatitis and classified as severe when 3 or more factors are present. So these are the criteria we have to take in Ranson's and Glasgow scoring system. And another classification of that is scoring system is Atlanta classification of acute pancreatitis. Here we classify into mild, moderate, and severe types, and we can also assess the local complications and organ failure. So this is called Atlanta classification. So this you have to remember where it is used because it is commonly asked in the NEET examination. And coming to the management. So in management, depending on the clinical assessment, when it is mild pancreatitis, always the management is conservative. So what is the conservative management is because there is inflammation of the pancreas, more fluid loss, patient is going into hypotension. So early aggressive fluid replacement is the key in the management of acute pancreatitis. So whenever the patient comes, immediately you must start intravenous fluids, and you have to put Rayleigh tube, and you have to put the Foley's catheter. All these 3 tubes you must keep because you can assess whether the fluid replacement is adequate or not by measuring the urinary output. And patient will have severe retching, vomiting, and nausea even though the stomach is empty, because you must empty the stomach so that I already told when you empty the stomach, the hydrochloric acid, it prevents the secretion of pancreatic enzymes. So aspiration with Rayleigh tube to give rest to the pancreas, and if necessary, you have to give blood transfusion also, particularly after measuring the hemoglobin. And you can also give infusion of albumin if there is low albumin, or amino acids if proteins are low. And you have to maintain charts whether the patient is gradually responding to the conservative treatment or not. So in this, you have to measure pulse rate, temperature, And also you must assess whether the patient is gradually having increasing pain associated with pyrexia, so that it will indicate whether there is any formation of pancreatic abscess. And drugs, prophylactic antibiotics, when you suspect that it is gradually going into severe pancreatitis leading to bacterial infection, then only you have to give antibiotics. Otherwise, in the initial management, there is no role for antibiotics. And if the patient is going to develop, as the pancreatitis go on increasing in severity, leading to bacteremia and bacterial sepsis, and the antibiotic of choice is intravenous cefuroxime or imipenem or ciprofloxacin along with metrozil are given. In severe acute pancreatitis, you have to give intravenous low molecular weight dextran to increase renal perfusion. Because of hypotension, there will be gradual renal failure. And alternatively, for increasing the renal perfusion, you have to give dopamine 2 micrograms per kg per minute intravenously for increasing the renal perfusion. And exploratory laparotomy, only the main indication for exploratory laparotomy is when the diagnosis is in doubt and patient is not responding to conservative management, or when you suspect that the patient has developed some of the pancreatic complications like abscess or pancreatic necrosis, then only you have to go for laparotomy. Otherwise, you should not do laparotomy in case of acute pancreatitis. But with the advent of imaging techniques, the surgical intervention is rarely done nowadays. Only in the initial phase, there is no role for laparotomy. But with the advent of imaging techniques, we can prevent unnecessary laparotomy in case of acute pancreatitis. And in early cases, pancreas should not be handled by doing laparotomy when the diagnosis is in doubt. And peritoneal lavage to remove the inflammatory exudate and necrotic tissue by inserting a tube. So this is a continuous post-operative closed lavage of the lesser sac that is advised by Beeger, because it is carried out with several double lumen and single lumen catheters. Each time 1 liter of saline is infused so that all the inflammatory fluid that is removed, and it can be repeated so that whatever the fluid present in the peritoneal cavity containing high levels of enzymes and some of the fibrous and necrotic tissue will be removed. And in case of necrotizing pancreatitis, laparotomy plus necrosectomy is done, and the wound is left to open as laparotomy, or we can place a mesh or chip so that we can give repeated washings. And fluid should be given very early, and rapid infusion of 3 to 4 liters of ringer lactate is used to treat hypovolemic shock. And plasma or albumin may also be given, because fluid replacement is very, very important. And pancreatic necrosectomy, it is ideally done 4 to 6 weeks later when the sepsis is still present. And CT guided FNAC or bacterial culture has to be done whenever there is a necrosis of the pancreas. And midline laparotomy is done, and lesser sac is entered through the debridement of dead tissue. And all fluid and tissue should be sent for aerobic and anaerobic culture. And blunt dissection rather than sharp dissection is done to minimize bleeding from the pancreas. That is when there is a pancreatic necrosectomy, when the pancreas is developing necrotizing pancreatitis, you have to remove the necrotic debris by doing laparotomy. And antibiotic of choice, that is quinolines and carbapenems. And ileostomy should be done for retrocolic necrosis. Sometimes the colon get involved and there may be damage to the wall of the colon, then you have to go for ileostomy. And in addition, you have to do cholecystectomy for gallstone pancreatitis. And there should be perfect hemostasis by using manual compression, either by sutures or ligatures. And in cases of early necrosectomy, lesser sac is packed and reopened, done after 2 days, and a zip closure of the abdomen is used. So in case of when it requires repeated laparotomy, then you can use zip closure of the abdomen so that you can give repeated washings depending upon the necessity of the, that is severity of the infection. And continuous lavage of lesser sac I showed in the figure, and retroperitoneum is done. Other alternative methods are closed packing, and endoscopic necrosectomy can also be done, and retroperitoneoscopic necrosectomy is also done. These are the various procedures when the patient develops necrotizing pancreatitis. So this is the necrosectomy specimen in case of necrotizing pancreatitis. That is, all the damaged pancreatic tissue was removed by blunt dissection, not at all doing any sharp dissection, so that the patient's recovery will be very good once you remove the dead tissue from the peritoneal cavity. And the treatment of gallstone pancreatitis: if gallstone is obstructing the ampulla of Vater and leading to pancreatitis, endoscopic sphincterotomy may be done as early as possible. After 2 to 3 weeks, once jaundice subsides, we can plan for cholecystectomy. So first you have to remove the obstruction. Next you have to plan for cholecystectomy. And if the patient is fit, the general condition allows, then you can do cholecystectomy as well as removal of the endoscopic sphincterotomy and removal of the CBD. And ఎన్ని స్లైడ్లు ఉన్నాయి? 1 2 3 6 7 చెప్పేసి. And complications of acute pancreatitis. This is a very, very important foremost question for you. Sometimes they may ask what are the various complications of acute pancreatitis? Describe in detail about the clinical features and management of pancreatic pseudocystin. So this is also a very, very important topic for you. So the complications are divided into systemic and local complications. And the systemic complications, depending upon the pathogenesis, I already told, the patient develops hypovolemia, hypoperfusion, which are major factors responsible for renal failure. And because of the collection of large amount of fluid in the third space, that is peritoneal cavity, pleural cavity, extravascular space, so all this leads to renal failure. And if shock occurs, fluid replacement with blood and albumin should be done at appropriate time and to treat the shock. And always you must correct the electrolyte abnormalities. And another complication, systemic complication, is respiratory insufficiency. The factors which are responsible for respiratory failure are, I already told, because upper abdominal pain, abdominal distension, elevation of the diaphragm, intravascular coagulation within the lung, and lecithin, which is present in the pulmonary surfactant, is altered due to lethinase, resulting in defective capillary alveolar exchange and defective ventilation caused because of pain. This is the main factor producing respiratory failure. And left-sided pleural effusion, which is not responding to treatment. So all these will cause respiratory failure. And always you must measure arterial blood gas analysis and administer oxygen sufficient doses so that we can prevent pulmonary insufficiency and ventilatory support. And hypocalcemia, I already told, because the fat which is digested by the lipase forms a soap, calcium soap, and it leads to low levels of serum calcium levels. And pleural effusion treated by pleural tap. And ARDS and MODS, some of the mediators as phosphatase damage alveolar membrane of the lungs leading to ARDS. I already described in the pathogenesis how various enzymes they damage the pathogenesis of pancreatitis leading to ARDS and MODS. And local complications, there are two important local complications. Number one is pancreatic abscess, which develops after 3 to 4 weeks of pancreatitis, and secondary infection of pancreatic pseudocyst results in pancreatic abscess. So it usually present on the left side, and it is drained by CT guided aspiration, and laparoscopically also you can treat the pancreatic abscess. And sometimes it may require open drainage for better removal of all the necrotic and fibrous tissue. So this is a pancreatic abscess treatment where you can see the pus we are aspirating from the within the pancreatic tissue because you should not do sharp dissection. Only the loculi you have to break or you have to aspirate with a syringe without any needle. So we are gradually aspirating the pus and we will give thorough wash and drain the peritoneal cavity. And pseudocyst of the pancreas, this is usually occurs second week following an attack of acute pancreatitis. The incidence is about 20%. And very rarely it may damage colon or stomach. Most commonly it damages the wall of the colon because it overlays the just very close to the pancreas. And pseudoaneurysm, I already told how it develops because of the damage to the wall of the vessels. So usually it damages gastroduodenal artery and splenic artery and leads to bleeding within the pancreatic tissue. And pseudoaneurysm, this condition is due to enzymatic dilation of the wall of the blood vessels and particularly splenic artery, gastroduodenal artery are commonly damaged and it is having high mortality and you must diagnose it by doing angiogram and embolization is the treatment and otherwise you have to do laparotomy and ligate the pseudoaneurysm. And this is the pseudoaneurysm where gastroduodenal artery is involved during surgery. And this is angiography showing the pseudoaneurysm. And these are the this is the table given in Bailey-Love. So systemic and local complications. So when they ask, you must write this table usually, which is more common in the first week and usually after the first week. So these are the complications in the second week. These are the complications during the first week when the patient has a severe attack of acute pancreatitis. So this table is very, very important. That is given in Bailey-Love. Right. Thank you. అయిపోయినా నేను ఎక్సిట్ కాలే సరిపోయింది 2 నిమిషాలు అయిపోతే నెక్స్ట్ సూడోసిస్ట్ చెప్పేసి నెక్స్ట్ క్లాస్
Very good.